Ukraine launched a massive drone attack on Russia on Monday night, killing one and wounding several others.
French President Macron met Moldovan counterpart Sandu, reiterating French support in the context of the country's bid to join the EU.
Syria announces the end of a days-long military operation against al-Assad loyalist fighters on Monday.
The Russian military says it shot down 337 Ukrainian drones overnight on Tuesday in what appears to be the biggest Ukrainian drone attack on Russia in 3 years. At least one person has been killed in the Moscow Oblast region and multiple others wounded. Most of the drones were downed in the Kursk region, while 91 were shot down over the Moscow region. The attack comes as a Ukrainian delegation is set to meet with America's top diplomat in Saudi Arabia on ending the 3-year war with Russia. Ukraine is to propose its own ceasefire deal and aims to sign a critical minerals deal with Washington to resume paused US military aid.
A cargo ship hit a tanker carrying jet fuel for the US military off of eastern England, setting both vessels ablaze and sending fuel pouring into the North Sea. The ship's owner said one crew member was missing hours later, but that 37 others from both ships were safe and accounted for. The collision triggered a major rescue operation by lifeboats, Coast Guard aircraft and commercial vehicles.
There should be a lot of electronics on both ships preventing it or giving you notice of what's going to happen. And there should also be crew on both ships watching the electronics, preventing it should happen. In somewhere down that chain, one of them's failed. Poor visibility watches have always been standard practice on merchant ships.
Local authorities said it appeared the crew of the cargo ship hadn't been maintaining a proper lookout as required by international maritime regulations. Scientists said the environmental impact might be less severe than with a spill of heavier crude oil.
A Ukrainian delegation set to meet with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, about ending the 3-year war with Russia. Two senior Ukrainian sources told Associated Press that the delegation will propose a ceasefire covering the Black Sea and long-range missile strikes, as well as the release of prisoners. Also, an agreement will be signed with the US on access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals, a deal that US President Donald Trump is keen to secure. Kyiv is trying to repair the damage done by the February 28th Trump-Zelensky Oval Office meeting, which turned into a live argument in front of cameras. Rubio and Zelensky landed a few hours apart on Monday in Saudi Arabia. If Ukraine and the US reach an understanding acceptable to Trump, that could accelerate his administration's push for peace talks. The rest of Europe remains skeptical about the talks, as they have been sidelined by Washington.
Russia announced on Monday that it was expelling 2 British diplomats stationed at the embassy in Moscow, accusing them of espionage. The Federal Security Service, FSB, claimed in a statement that the diplomats had submitted false personal details when applying for entry into Russia and were involved in alleged intelligence and subversive activities that posed a threat to national security. However, no evidence was provided to support these claims. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, diplomatic expulsions between Moscow and Western nations have become increasingly frequent. Last month, London expelled a Russian diplomat in retaliation for an expulsion in November.
French President Emmanuel Macron met his Moldovan counterpart Maya Sandu at the Élysée Palace in Paris. Macron reiterated French support for Moldova in the context of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, as well as their accession bid to the European Union. The EU had announced plans to open a Moldovan office to strengthen engagement in the eastern region.
Moldova is no longer dependent on Russian gas, and today we take another step forward. Together with the Agence Française de Développement, we are signing a €30 million agreement to improve energy efficiency in Moldova. This investment will reduce energy waste lower costs, and strengthen our energy independence.
Sandu's arrival comes ahead of a vote on a new €1.9 billion instrument for Moldova to accelerate socio-economic reforms, strengthen its resilience and promote EU integration.
A new political crisis in Portugal could push the country towards its third general election in 3 years as early as May. With 2 motions of confidence rejected in less than 2 weeks, Prime Minister Luís Montenegro's own proposal for a confidence vote is likely to be rejected as well. If lawmakers reject Montenegro's motion, the government would fall pending a decision by the president on whether to call fresh elections. The discovery that Montenegro's family received €4,500 from a group of casinos, for which the government will decide on concession contracts this year, initially triggered the crisis. The anonymous complaint sparked questions about potential conflicts of interest in the Prime Minister's private business dealings. Montenegro has denied any wrongdoing and called an early election a necessary evil.
Isto nunca tinha acontecido em Portugal. Haver uma moção de confiança que, pelos vistos, vai ser reprovada, mas que não tem a ver com a desconfiança na ação política do governo que se está a governar mal, mas tem a ver com as próprias condições de integridade, se tem ou não tem, do próprio Primeiro-Ministro, que é o líder desse mesmo governo.
O Presidente da República já admitiu que, no caso de o governo cair, a primeira data possível para o país ir às urnas é 11 e 18 de maio. Nas ruas de Lisboa, os portugueses parecem não querer ir a eleições e pedem mais transparência ao Primeiro-Ministro.
Não vejo uma grande saída para o país, não me parece que as eleições vão resolver absolutamente nada, manterá mais ou menos o mesmo modelo de distribuição de deputados, mais para cá ou mais para lá, e vamos entrar num outro impasse.
Dada a situação, é melhor esclarecer com eleições do que estarmos aqui a empatar e não saímos do mesmo lugar.
Acho que há pouca transparência e acho que eles deviam mesmo era desistir do governo, não é? Mas as eleições é uma chatice. Eu acho que vai ser uma despesa muito grande para o país e quem paga isso tudo somos nós mesmos.
O debate e votação da moção de confiança deverá acontecer esta terça-feira, dia 11 de março, 1 ano e 1 dia depois das legislativas de 2024. Os deputados serão chamados a votar e a expressar se confiam ou não neste Executivo. Caso haja uma maioria no sentido da rejeição, isso ditará a queda do governo. Joana Mourão Carvalho, para a Euronews, em Lisboa.
Former independent presidential candidate Călin Georgescu has appealed the electoral authorities' decision to ban him from running again to Romania's constitutional court. Now, this is an effort his political allies don't necessarily seem to be putting much hope behind, keeping in mind recent statements made by these leaders. But what we are seeing in the meantime is more protests right here in front of the constitutional court's headquarters. In the meantime, we are also seeing multiple police investigations being opened. On the one hand, one is centered around the main opposition party's leader, George Simeon, and that is for a post he made on social media allegedly inciting the masses to cause violent incidents. Now, there are also investigations around the violent protests that took place last night, especially investigations regarding charges of destruction of property and assaulting riot police officers. But it is important to note that as of now, not one person has been detained, though police say that they are making efforts in identifying all those involved in the violent protests.
NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte promised full support for Bosnia and Herzegovina as tensions rise over Bosnian Serb separatist moves. The latest crisis began when Bosnian Serb lawmakers passed laws blocking Bosnia's central judiciary and police from operating in Republika Srpska, the Serb majority region that makes up about half of Bosnia. Speaking from Sarajevo, Rutte reacted.
NATO remains firmly committed to the stability of this region and to the security of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I have three main messages to deliver today, but one is really the main message. First, our commitment to Bosnia and Herzegovina is steadfast.
This move happened after Milorad Dodik, the pro-Russia leader of Republika Srpska, was sentenced to a year in prison and banned from office for 6 years for defying Bosnia's top international peace envoy. Syria's new government announced the end of a days-long military operation against fighters loyal to overthrown President Bashar al-Assad on Monday. On Sunday, Syrian activists had gathered in Damascus to call for peace and an end to the killing of civilians. But war monitor, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, reported violent clashes with gunmen associated to the Ministry of Defense. The initial surge of violence came after a surprise attack by gunmen from the Alawite community on the police patrol, kicking off widespread fighting across Syria's coastal region on Thursday. According to war monitors, at least 1,130 people have been killed in the clashes, including 830 civilians. On Monday, the European Union condemned these attacks, demanding for the perpetrators to be brought to justice. While on Sunday, the US called for the perpetrators of these massacres to be held accountable.